Sometimes I wonder if I keep too many sketchbooks at the same time, but quite frankly, no. I need them, they're mine. And I have my justifications on why I need to keep all of them at the same time. And I wanted to go over that today because, you might also benefit from keeping one or two of them. I'm not saying you should keep all of them, because it is a bit excessive to be honest, but I draw a lot, so I do go through them. But before I start all the yap, hello everyone, welcome back to my atelier. I hope you're doing well. Today I'm going over all the sketchbooks that I'm keeping and my uses for them. A quick little note. For some reason my voice is very rough today. I'm not sick, it's just rough. So excuse me for that. And yeah, I would like to start with just my sketchbook. This is just my sketchbook, full stop. It's a Leuchtturm sketchbook. I really like it. Some people may not like it because the pages are quite thin, but I personally don't mind. In fact, I welcome it because it makes me feel like the pages are less precious. I don't feel like I'm wasting fancy paper. An alternative to, if you would like something similar but with thicker paper, is either the Moleskine sketchbooks or the Royal Talents art creation ones, which are the ones that I personally really like and you're gonna see me use down the line a little bit more. So this sketchbook is mainly just for my character designs, my world building, stuff that I just like working on because I think it's fun. A lot of my OCs, a lot of shenanigans. It's really nothing super serious, and I like to keep it that way. Right, next up, here's where it starts getting a little bit more interesting. I have this little sketchbook here. I draw a lot of characters, and I would definitely say that I'm more of a designer than I am an illustrator. Not that I don't like it, I do illustrate a lot, but a lot of my work is focused on designing characters or props. So in order to kind of do that, you have to build your visual library. So a lot of my sketchbooks are focused on building that visual library in a more literal sense. So I also like to kind of divide my sketchbooks by category. This little book is focused exclusively on jewelry. And I really like jewelry. I think the kind of jewelry or lack of or amount of jewelry a character wears can says a lot about them. And I feel like most of my characters have jewelry just because I like the way it looks. I like the stories it can tell. But in order to kind of not fall into the trap of drawing the same thing over and over and over again, I have to know what other things look like. I have to know what I don't know, if that makes sense. So this sketchbook is mainly just, drawing jewelry I find online, in catalogs, I see on people, I find in books. It's about just drawing jewelry for the sake of drawing it, because it allows me to kind of map out the possibilities that there are within this kind of niche, if that's a way to say it. I think I also have one for clothing, which is what I'm going to be touching on next, but having a separate one just for jewelry where I really just do a piece per page or 2 pieces per page, it's nice because I can come back to it and just kind of flip through it. In fact, this is the second one that I've filled with jewelry. I quite frankly just don't know where the first one is. That's on me. So yeah. Would I recommend keeping this? If you draw a lot of jewelry, yes, but quite frankly, you can also just keep a book with a bunch of clothing and jewelry and stuff. You don't need a separate book for each of things, but I like it because it's my personal catalog that I can come back to. And yeah. Next up, we have my travel sketchbook ish. So when I do go travel, I like taking a sketchbook with me, and I tend to approach it a little bit differently from my regular sketchbook, just because I really like working in watercolor when I travel. So I'm using the Etcher sketchbook because their paper is amazing, and it's also a little bit pricey, so it's a bit of a treat when you go on vacation because you get to use the nice sketchbook. It's really convenient. If you would like to know more about it, I actually have a video up on my travel supplies where I go in depth on why I chose this sketchbook specifically and why I think it's so great, and also potential alternatives to, not that sketchbook specifically, but kind of picking your sketchbook for travel, I personally like keeping travel sketchbooks because it gets me drawing things that I think look pretty, but I probably wouldn't draw otherwise. I took one to Japan last summer, and the most recent one I took to Hong Kong, so I ended up drawing a lot of food. And it's just good because it gets you kind of out there. I think even as someone who's not looking to go into the quote-unquote like traditional arts, observational sketches are very beneficial because drawing from life is just so different from drawing from a picture. And it sounds really stupid, but you only really get it once you start drawing from life. So a travel sketchbook is like the best way to basically just get a bunch of like plein air paintings done. And yeah, this is one that I definitely do recommend you keep. And you don't even have to keep a travel sketchbook, but if you have the opportunity to travel, or even if you just go to like a different part of your city, draw. Sit there, sit down, get your little beverage or not, and just draw. Even if it's just for like 10 minutes, half an hour, you're gonna learn something new. Trust me. It doesn't even have to look good. I cannot talk today. The art of observation is something that is very, very important. So, highly recommend. The next one is another little sketchbook. I would like to quickly shout out the artist at the front. His name's Brandon. He goes by Net Ninja online. He is very super awesome, and he makes really awesome stickers. And yeah, as you can see, I have like a bunny theme at the front and a cat theme at the back because I love bunnies and cats and frogs, but I ran out of frog stickers. I know. Zoe likes frogs, ran out of frog stickers. But this is specifically for, well, it initially was supposed to be for weapons because prop designs. I draw a lot of like high fantasy art, so you would expect that there would be a lot of weapons, but this kind of just turned into like a swords and daggers and bayonets book, and I blame the like source books that I used to study from, because I bought 2 like encyclopedias. One of them was about like daggers, and then the other one was about swords. Really, really awesome. Actually, let me get the names of them. Okay, my sword book is downstairs, but it's by the same publisher, and the one about knives, daggers, and bayonets is called The Illustrated Encyclopedia of Knives, Daggers, and Bayonets by Dr. Tobias Capwell. Very awesome. This guy knows a lot about sharp blades. It's really interesting. It's like this. Okay, I feel like now I'm talking more about the book than I'm talking about my sketchbook. Okay, let me finish this. So, the book talks a lot about like knives and stuff through the ages and from different parts of the world, which is really interesting because as much as you try to kind of quote unquote disconnect fantasy from like real cultures, you're always gonna have some sort of influence just because of, you know, you need something to anchor it by. And knowing why things look the way they do and why they're made out of this, not just like necessity wise but also trade wise. So for example, you have a lot of like very decorated like hilts from daggers. That was a sign of opulence, okay? Like they had daggers that were made from materials from 3 different parts of the world. So I always say if you want to be a good designer or artist, you should read, because stuff like this really teaches you a lot, and then it makes your art a lot more purposeful, I find. So this is the books that I've been kind of studying from for my knives and stuff. I wanted to do like bows and stuff too, but there's just so many like cool looking knives and stuff, so I've just been studying. And yeah, this is what this little book is about. I kind of wish I picked a bigger one. I don't know why I picked such a small one, but you know, here we are. I think that you don't necessarily need to keep a separate book for daggers or weapons, unless you're like me and you're like drawing a lot of the same or similar things over and over again to the point where it would just clog up your sketchbooks. I like the Royal Talents art creation sketchbooks a lot because they're quite cheap for the amount of pages and stuff you're getting, so I don't feel bad about going through them quite quickly. So that's just something to keep in mind. They're like A5, yeah, their A5 sketchbooks are actually really nice. It was like my main brand of sketchbook that I used to keep before I switched to Leuchtturm. and I honestly don't have anything bad about them to say. The only thing is like the paper is not white, it's cream colored. Me personally, I really like that, but I know some people are not that big of a fan about that. But that's just something to keep in mind. Speaking of cheap sketchbooks, I was debating on if I wanted to even include this because it's technically not a sketchbook. It's more of like, I don't want to use loose paper all the time. This is one of those little, I don't know, I bought this in Japan. I bought a bunch of them because they're really cheap, and I really liked the paper because, I don't know, something that was just really nice. And I just use it to a thumbnail like my illustrations. If I want to plan out an illustration, I just draw squares on this before I move on to the final piece because I don't want to use my nice sketchbook paper for it. I recommend you keep this just because sometimes it's nice to have all your ideas in one place. Sometimes you have a composition you really like, but it's not fitting for the specific piece you're making, so you can always go back on it, always highlight it. I go through these really quickly because sometimes I need like 20 thumbnails for one piece. One Piece? I'm kidding, guys. I would never be a One Piece fan. No offense. This goes out to my friend Misha, who's a One Piece fan. Yeah. Honestly, get any paper, or staple a bunch of pieces of paper together and use that. That's what my art teacher did. We have one in art, so quite frankly, like, this is really not that deep. Just, I didn't want to use loose sheets of paper, so yeah. Now, last but not least, this is one that I only started really, really recently, but it's really cool in my personal opinion. And that is this is also a Royal Talents art creation sketchbook. This is to study clothing, but not as in drawing them, like drawing fashion models. This is about specifically traditional clothing or ceremonial clothing, kind of dissecting the different layers, what it's for. I started to realize that a lot of my fantasy art tends to draw from my cultural backgrounds, and that also includes clothing. And knowing why we as people wear certain types of clothing and for what occasion is really useful, because you might not reference it directly in your drawing or in your world building, but it's going to give you a good understanding of why we as people have these kinds of clothing and why they're important to us. And that doesn't just span to traditional dress. This also spans to why do people in the north used to wear these things while people in the south or in the equator used to wear these things. So this is a lot about fabric, materials, craftsmanship. A lot of it has to do with craftsmanship. So I recently got really into studying 19th century fashion, which is really fun. I bought a book on it, I read through it, it was really interesting. But the best way that I tend to retain information is when I draw it out or write it down. So this is kind of my visual way of taking notes. And it's really fun. It's a bit more time consuming because you do have to do your research, which is why I don't have a lot of pages filled in this book. Because I used to just do it digitally, which you can also do. I just like having it as a physical book because I lose my digital files all the time. I'm not good at digital bookkeeping, but yeah. Do I recommend you keep this if you have the time? Yes, it's super, super fun. It teaches you a lot, but you have to be willing to do the reading for it. As said, I unfortunately, drawing without observing can only take you thus far. So you have to be able to read, learn, look, see a bunch of things around you in order to be able to know how to draw these things. So that's why I also say the practice everyday thing is kind of useless if you don't know what you're practicing. And these sketchbooks are kind of a way for me to compartmentalize this, and I feel like I used that word wrong again. I feel like this is the second time where I used that word wrong in a video. But it's a good way for me to organize my thoughts and also have a visual, literally a physical visual library to go back on, because quite frankly I have the memory of a crab. So yeah, that's all. I'm pretty sure that's all for today. Thank you so much for watching. Sorry for the radio silence. Turns out senior year is not all just skipping and fun and senior pranks. There's actual work to do. I know, crazy, right? So yeah, that's about it for today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again soon. Bye!